Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm your host, Kirk Witmer, and with me today is a longtime resident of the Coatesville area. Please welcome Bill Renfrew. Bill, it's nice to have you with us today.
Nice to be here, Kurt.
Bill, you first came to Coatesville when?
Well, I came to Coatesville for a girl, and that was in 1951. So I came here, learned about Coatesville, married a Coatesville girl, and moved away. Later, she encouraged me to come back when I changed jobs, and I've been here for more than 40 years.
Bill, if you would, share with us your first impressions of Coatesville back in the early 50s.
Well, coming in starry-eyed, amorous, truly in love with my college sweetheart, wife-to-be, I thought Coatesville was a wonderful place. I haven't changed my mind at all. But Coatesville proper, at that time, was the focal point of this area. A little more than 13,000 people lived there then, and they still live about the same number today. But the Coatesville area, what people call Coatesville, is much different. And of course, the hometown, go down in the Saturday night and walk around and look at the stores kind of town, just doesn't exist anymore. When you talk about the Coatesville area, our school district is 72 square miles, runs all the way near the Gap, over to Honeybrook, back over to Doe Run, down. Some of our homes actually look into the Downingtown high school football field. That's a huge area, and it's expanding. This is once was a steel town, and most people worked at the steel mill. Today, we're a bedroom community, very little industry, and so things have changed a great deal. But I think Coatesville is a very neat place to live.
Now, you were away for a few years and came back in what year?
I came back in 1961. My wife and I were married in 57, and she taught at North Penn. I taught at Conestoga, and salaries weren't very good. After my first child was about to be born, I decided to leave. I worked in industry for a year and did quite well with Park Davis. I hated it. One day when I was outside a very good surgeon's office, a little red schoolhouse right around the corner started to ring the bell. I got to tell you, I cried in the parking lot. And I knew then I was coming back to teaching. I had a lot of offers, but my wife kind of encouraged me to come to Coatesville. So I'm here because this is her hometown, and she loves it.
Her old stomping grounds.
Her old stomping grounds.
So you come back to Coatesville 10 years after first being here.
That's correct.
What were the most noticeable or significant changes that caught your eye?
Well, during that 10-year period of time, Coatesville hadn't changed much, although it was enlarging. When I came here, the Coatesville School District was without the Brandywines. We were the school district of choice, top salaries in the area, paid mainly by Luke and Steel money. We had whatever we wanted. We owned our own schools. We had no debt. And we were a small school district and a small town. But things were on the move. And the state forced us to take the Brandywines because they had no high school. And we began to expand. And now Coatesville itself became the Coatesville area. And that's a significant change, especially when the bypass came in. And by 1966, we needed a new high school. And we actually bought land from the government. As a matter of fact, it was a pretty good deal. We bought about 22 acres in the middle. And they gave us the rest, which turned out to be 104 acres, and that's where Cache is today. So rapid growth, change in transportation, more people were working someplace else than Lukens, and the whole, we were rural, but now we're becoming rural urban, and we're pretty close to suburban today.
Mhm.
So that's how it changed. And of course, when we used to have generation after generation go through the schools, and you'd have third and fourth generations. Now we have a whole lot of people mixing in, and we got a different kind of mix of people.
We're newcomers, and it's no longer a life's goal to work at Lukens in our community.
No, as a matter of fact, you couldn't get a job. It wouldn't be enough there. When I came here, there were more than 6,000 people employed at Lukens.
Mhm.
And they had a kind of a family feeling about things, even though they had a union. And they were well taken care of. And a lot of our youngsters bypassed colleges to go to Lukens because there was actually better chance to make a good living at Lukens. Today, with technology, a fellow by the name of Antrim was a very important man at Lukens, and he told me one time when I had my students down there, Bill, we could get rid of at least 600 people right now. We're going to keep them till they retire. But with the new furnaces, we can make steel. We don't need all these people, and you've seen that happen, and that's
Mhm.
exactly what has happened to Lukens Steel.
Yeah. Bill, you raised an interesting question with something you said earlier. We talked about the Coatesville School District and the adjoining Brandywine School Districts, and I know that there was a consolidation, but what did the outlying school districts do for high school students if they had no high schools prior to consolidating?
That's a good question. They came to our school and they paid for it. They actually did come to
And paid
what was
tuition?
Scott, and they paid tuition.
Mhm.
Yeah, and eventually state formed consolidations around the state, and they thought that a natural union would be the Brandywines with us.
Mhm.
The problem was these were all new schools with long-term debt, and so when we did that, we became indebted for a long period of time. And part of the problems that we've had over the years with the teacher contracts and that kind of thing goes back to that very union where we took on a very large debt when we had kind of fully paid school and no real problems with money. We wouldn't have had some of the problems with the strikes and things that we had we not had that debt. But again, this is a better school district because we do have this large Coatesville area school district. And I'd imagine, as you look at Route 30, and Walmart's going to go in at 10 and 30, there's a great number of homes being built in the Callan, West Brandywine area, and I suspect that someday we'll probably be two school districts with Route 30 bypass being the marker for the two different districts.
To have a north and a south.
Could be, we could be our own school district, or we could be like the Westchester school system that has two high schools, and the Downingtown school system that has two high schools. I guess it's a matter of how people feel about each other when we get to that point.
Yeah. Bill, talking about education, I've known you to be a scientist and a teacher of biology, and that venue has been yours for quite a number of years. Share some of your observations with us, if you would, about ecological aspects here in and around Coatesville.
Well, of course, when you go back in time, you can't point fingers at particular people because the laws have changed. What we've done in our townships, and we have to realize that people call this the Coatesville area, but there are large townships much bigger than Coatesville. When we first started, Coatesville made the rules, and even one time they tried to get the Callan to come in and be a part of Coatesville. So the laws have changed. We have now zoning boards and state laws that change things. Ecology has changed because we now know what it's about. when I started teaching school in 1956, it was a word, and we were talking about birds and bees and beautiful scenery and that kind of thing. We didn't think that, for instance, because we sprayed our crops with DDT, that this would impact on the life of people, that someday mothers would have in their milk a higher amount of DDT than would be allowed in cow's milk to be sold in the stores. But that is in fact what happened to us. So if you go back in time and look at it, Luke and Steel was a primary problem with our ecological system. They were a steel company dumping things in the brandy wine, and the smokestacks that were put out into the air, things that created sulfuric acid and that kind of thing. But Lukens really did a tremendous effort in trying to clean up the water. So they put a lot of money into it, and the water that came back into the system of the brandy wine eventually was better than the water they took out. They put a lot of money into their smokestacks trying to keep our air from being polluted, so you got to take your hat off to them. But if you look at another area, and we were farming area, a large part of the brandy wine, the West Branch, which is our brandy wine, was impacted by farm bad management, so to speak. Now, it wasn't that the farmers were trying to be bad managers, they just didn't know.
Didn't know how.
We didn't know a lot about farm conservation. So the cows tramped down the banks, the mud went into brandy wine, washed down, and we had siltation to the point where the state for a while wouldn't even stock our streams because it wasn't fit for trout. And even today, they still put a put and take kind of a thing, and trout don't really live by natural reproduction in the brandy wine because it's just been impacted by the farm runoff, the cows, the manure, and that kind of thing. But then came the building. And at first, the building codes weren't strong, so builders just didn't take care of the runoff. They built concrete, and we have a tremendous amount of concrete now. And water doesn't seep into concrete. It runs off in places you don't really want it to run off,
yes.
And you have floods, which we had.
So I guess that means that siltation and erosion and flooding were pretty much the order of the day.
They certainly were. But there's a fourth factor that nobody takes any responsibility for, and we actually are all responsible for it. And that's the fact that when we first came to town, there weren't many people. If there were people living here, my father-in-law really didn't even have a car. He walked to work, and the family walked. We began to see more and more and more traffic. And the primary polluter in the ecology problem is the car. It puts 60% of the pollution into the air. When it rains, that stuff goes into the rain, becomes acids of various kinds. That impacts the streams because it changes the pH, and the things in the streams can't live under those conditions. It changes the growing conditions for the crops, and changes whether they can grow or how good they can grow. So as we increase the population, and we've grown from just a few thousand people to, in the county itself, more than 300,000, with our cars, not only one car, but many family cars. You can see that in our school parking lots. We have a parking lot problem because our kids drive to school their own car. And so this became the major polluter, and we're still trying to deal with that. Chester County is one of the most beautiful counties in America. And Coatesville, the Coatesville area, is one of the very beautiful places in Chester County. We know we have an ecological problem, but we have commissions to work with it. They should be lauded for what they're trying to do. And I don't know how we get a handle on our traffic and our automobile problem, but I think that's a great issue that will be resolved in the next 10 years.
But Bill, all the traffic that we've talked about has given us a greater degree of mobility, and some of the other people who have been participating in this project have pointed out that that mobility takes a lot of business out to malls, and that has been a major factor in the decline of the business district of Coatesville itself. As we look back over the years, we know there are a lot of businesses that once were that are no more. We can tell that by looking over the high school yearbooks and see who advertised and who didn't. What's your take on decline in Coatesville in terms of business?
Well, I think the decline in business has been the expansion of the Coatesville area. And the problem that we have in Coatesville itself is that space is the problem. If you have to, for instance, get enough parking for people to come in that would be even in the small mall that we have down here at the Kmart, you have to tear things down. There just isn't any room. And then, of course, they made a bad judgment when they kept their parking meters. The malls were free, the malls were easy, and as a result, why people didn't want to come to town, be threatened with a fine, and park where there was no parking. So there was no easy access. And then the store composition changed. If you look at a Kmart today or a shop like that, it's as many stores as we had in all of Coatesville, all in one great big shopping area. And now with this idea about the supermarket thing, if you put a few more stores like a drugstore and a few other things in there, you have a little city right there in front of you. So with easy access, why it became the place of choice. And I don't think it was a result of people not liking to come to Coatesville. The convenience of going to the mall made this an outmoded way of dealing with things.
There was just no reason any longer to continue with small specialty stores.
That's correct. I mean, let's face it, my dad lived in an age when the horse and buggy actually did exist. He got his first driver's license by driving around on his farm till he could actually take a car and handle it, and then they gave him the driver's license. It really wasn't a test. Well, that same kind of thing probably could be thought about as you talk about what's the difference between the Coatesville town and the Coatesville area. In the more modern Coatesville area, of which Coatesville itself is a piece, the shop as we know it, unless it's a specialty shop, very well done, and they're working on that, people have no need, nor the time, nor do they want to be inconvenienced with that kind of an area. They will shop at a mall. And it's just the way things have changed as we've gotten bigger and more mobile.
Bill, I can remember that athletics have seemed to be an important part of your life here in the Coatesville area. Are there any memorable moments that you would like to share with us?
Well, Coatesville has been blessed. We don't think it's so because we always think we're going to be the champion. And I used to point out to my kids that as far as championships go, we don't have a football championship that's a state championship. We don't have a basketball championship that's a state championship. But we do have track and field championships. And if you want to look at the most successful sport as far as championships go, it's probably track and field. We've had great track and field athletes. We've had a national record holder in a guy named Art Pollard, and Billy Joe, who's renowned as a football fella, lost to Gary Gubner in his high school years in the national championships, and he was a shot putter. Went to Villanova not on football scholarship, but on a track scholarship with the renowned track coach Jim Tupney, and he allowed him to play football. We've had great basketball. I think of Rich Hamilton, who is our latest hero, but if you go back, Hubie Marshall was a great basketball player, and girls athletics have changed from when my wife played on one of the only undefeated ladies teams in basketball in the 1950s. They didn't have it was 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, and only 3 could shoot. Girls basketball has changed into a wonderful sport, and we've had great teams and great rivalry with Downingtown, We have a state championship in girls basketball, not boys. And that's a credit to the great girls that have come down through our town. You could go into other sports, individual sports. Our swimming has had wonderful, wonderful athletes over the years. Last year's team was one of the best we've ever had. Our field hockey is competitive now. Our soccer teams have had their days in the glory. And the uniqueness of it is that when I first started teaching here, girls had hardly anything that they could do besides be cheerleaders, and we had very few sports for boys. Now, if you look at our program, we have an ice hockey program, we have volleyball, we have lacrosse, we have a myriad of activities for our kids. So that means more kids get a chance to play, and more parents get involved with their kids. And this is better for us all the way around. We have a whole lot more kids involved. And then we have clubs like the ski club that is large. Over 100 kids ski every year. That's fairly expensive for the parents because it doesn't cost the school district anything, but it's an opportunity for them to get out and do a life sport, which is a very important thing. Our golf program has been very successful, one of the most successful as far as Chestnut Championships go. And so athletics has been a wonderful thing. Our baseball team has been absolutely marvelous. I think we're 4 or 5 district championships in a row, and we're regarded as the top team in the East every year. Credit to the people from the Callan area that actually have put a major amount of emphasis in that Callan program down there. And of course, Harold Ziegler has made a major difference because he's given his life for this. And I'd like to mention a couple of people who are involved. Walt Funk was a guy way back who did a tremendous amount for athletics here. Ross Kershey has been a dedicated person who is in the Pennsylvania Hall of Fame for athletics. Harry Buddy Lewis, our current track and field coach, has dedicated his life to athletics. And way back a long time ago, an athletic director and a very large influence on our athletics, Malcolm Stuber, did a tremendous amount for us. And people in the community, such as John Entrican, has put a tremendous amount of work and time and effort into our program. And one of the largest cross-country events in all of America is run right here, and it's called the Steel City Invitational. And it was started by a group of guys, the Coatesville AA. This doesn't even exist today. But some of those guys who once were members of that thing still helped to run this thing more than 30 years after it was started. A credit to people willing to take time for our youngsters, to see them enjoy themselves, but also to learn some things that sports will teach you that it's hard to find other places. So yeah, sports has been good for Coatesville, and we have been good for sports.
Bill, your career as an educator has spanned, well, we'll just say quite a number of years. From the time that you started teaching until you retired, did you notice any changes in attitudes and philosophies among students and or their parents?
Well, I think both. And that had to happen because when we first started, many of our kids were going to go get a job at Luke and Steele, and forever they would be a part of that program. Well, that started to dry up, but it became obvious also as we got more mobility and a whole lot of different people coming into our area that if you didn't have an education, you probably had limited your future. And so education has gotten better and better and better. The kids, although they came from families of not great means, recognized that if they were going to do something with their life, they had to get some education. And some people don't realize that the Coatesville Area School District is not made up of, especially at the high school, of one school. We actually have at least five schools. What does that mean? Well, it means we recognize that we have all different kinds of youngsters coming to our school. We have kids who are fairly slow and have difficult time with regular school. We have a program for them. We have a program for kids who are average kids who are unlikely to go to college but might be able to go to technical areas and training areas. And we've actually allowed CAT to come onto our property. We gave them, sold them that property, and that vocational technical school is very important to those kinds of kids who want to make a future. College is not the only answer.
Exactly.
Some of my students who have made great strides and are very important in our community never went to college, but have done a great job and through our education system and a recognition that they could get other things other than college. We have programs for our college kids, our academics who go, of which you are a part of that program. I remember when you were back in the 60s. And that's right, 60s?
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Careful,
Time does go fly.
Don't give too much away now.
And so we recognize that we're a diverse community, and we try to meet their needs. We also are strong in discipline. Sometimes people think when they hear about some problems that we have at our school that we're having problems. No, we're not. We're solving problems. We recognize them, and we try to do it for the benefit of the kids. We couldn't do this without the parents. The parents give us backing. They allow us to create a school for their youngsters. And I say allow because the state actually tells us that we, the educator, are in locus parentis, which means in place of the parents.
Exactly.
So our parents have allowed us to develop a school system, and we think that the intermediate school, high school, split school is for our best benefit because we can get kids for 2 years, 9th and 10th. They learn to become self-reliant, not influenced by the older guys, and then we let them mature, they grow up, and are ready to try to go out in the world and make a mark for themselves. So the parents have been very supportive. We have many strong organizations. We couldn't do any of these things without the parents. We have good parents, we have good kids, we have problems, we solve them, and I think we might be the best buck in the county as far as education goes. And I've taken a good hard look at education, but I am prejudiced. I believe Coatesville's doing a really good job.
Well, we're certainly trying very hard, I know that much. Bill, someone once said to me that the job of school board was the second toughest job in the country. And I asked him what the first job was, and he said parenting. What is your take on parents and school boards and teachers union?
Well, I've had a lot of experience. I was the strike captain for the strike. I had 70 parents write me a letter and say I should get out of town with my wife and a friend of ours, Jean Jarmoska. They signed the letter, actually. I had some guy call me up and while we were striking every hour till 12 o'clock. And when we finally settled, he made one last call and I said, "Hey fella, please call me. I've got my life regulated by your calls, so keep calling. This is great stuff." Only kidding, though. I never think that conflict between teachers who are here to help the youngsters and parents whose youngsters you're helping is a good thing. And the board that represent the parents when there's conflict has a tough job. Now, it's very hard because they don't have all the money in the world. If they did, I'm sure that school boards would spend it on the kids. So they have a bottom line. And if you recognize that, you begin to understand that they're kind of between the rock and the hard place.
Absolutely.
Right. Teachers are people. They work. They have kids. They have families. They have commitments. They aren't monks who are dedicated to chastity, poverty, and obedience. They have a life, and they have to support it. And being college graduates, they want to support it within a reasonable means of living. So there is an obvious problem. Not enough money to do what everyone would like to do. So it's a tough job, a tough call. And so over the years, we've had conflict. We've had conflict partly because we've been increasing at a tremendous rate. We're increasing again. We're wondering where to build schools. That's a long-term financial commitment. We don't have the industry support that we once had. No longer does Lukens pay the bill. I think Cowan pays a bigger part of our tax budget than Lukens or anybody else. So where do we get the money? And of course, the people who are involved with the school board are elected. Hard to find people who don't have causes of their own, who know something about management. If you've got a budget of $42 million or more, you ought to be a CEO of a very big company and paid some real money. Well, these guys work for almost nothing actually.
Yes.
And they don't have training in many areas that are necessary to be big businessmen, which is in fact what they are.
Mm-hmm.
They get the call, they answer, and they try to do as good as they can. So we've had conflict, a natural part of growth. And of course, inflation has created a serious problem for us, because if inflation goes 4 or 5 or 6%, and you don't have a means to get 4 or 5 or 6% of new tax money, we have a problem. We have a problem, of course, with property valuation, because Coatesville itself, when you look at the properties, are older properties, they're doubles and that kind of thing. The tax base just isn't there compared to, let's say, bigger homes that are being built out in the other part of our area, where you got a $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 home. The tax base is better. Very difficult. And then the worst part is the state has never done their job for us. We've always paid a bigger part of the share. The state always promises to be 50-50. They've never done it.
Never
in
follow
a
through on
long
that.
time. They've never done it. So we've had to fight among ourselves when in fact many of the problems that we've had are state produced or conditions produced, the result of changing economy right here in our own town, changing tax base, and of course mobility of people coming in and coming out. It's been a tough time. It's not easy. And of course the teachers always want as much money as they can for the kids and as much money as they can for themselves, and the school district's always trying to say to the constituents, the school board, we're holding the line, we're not going to tax you anymore. And it's just it's almost like a paradox, because you got to hold the line, but you got to give more. Now that's not possible.
No, it's certainly not.
And so it creates conflict. And I think we have done a pretty good job over the long haul of living together. The teachers have given in quite a bit. The school boards have tried hard to do as much as they believe they can. And if the state would kick in a little more money, it would help a whole lot. If we were able to get a better handle on tax base, we might be able to do something. I don't know whether we're going to get industrial parks. We've tended not to want to do that in our area. That would help us.
It would help us a lot.
Lukens is dying as a source of revenue here for us. What is the answer? If you were a planner and you said, plan for the Coatesville area school district or even for Chester County, how do you get enough money to give each kid a free, tax-supported, same education, equal education for all kids? It's a tough job. I don't have the answer to that. And I don't know that vouchers is the answer either, which is the latest kind of an idea. Mm-hmm. Voucher kind of says, well, I'll take my kid out of this school system and I'll put him in another school system where he'll get a better education, rather than getting a hold of the handle on the problem and saying, let's make the best possible school district with the money, mm-hmm. so all kids can be together in a very good school system that we can afford. And if you have a particular inclination, I have nothing to say about that for people who have a particular religious belief or particular cultural idea that they want their own school system. As long as their kids can pass the state exam, that's fine. But let's try to keep most of our kids in a free public tax-supported education. I think it's fundamentally a basis for what makes America great.
Mm-hmm. Bill, we've talked a lot about the evolution of the city of Coatesville, but as one of your students from some years ago, you taught me that evolution is a process that never ends. What do you see on the horizon for Coatesville? What do we need to do as a community to maintain, or if we can, even improve our standard of living here?
Well, I think we have to recognize, first of all, that we are an area, no longer Coatesville proper.
Mm-hmm.
That each piece, it's kind of like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And if we can learn to come together as an area, all of the townships cooperating with each other,
Mm-hmm.
including Coatesville, Coatesville can no longer tell the other townships what they're going to do, but in a very cooperative manner, we could create a tremendous area here with a tremendous tax base. We could create something that would be similar to some of the areas around America, because Chester County is truly beautiful, and we're a part of the beauty of Chester County. We could create a tourist area that would be that is very wonderful, and make it even more meaningful. We could redevelop the city proper of Coatesville into its grand old days, because if you look at those buildings, they're absolutely wonderful. If you had to put them back up, and they're still here, just redevelop them into. I noticed they're working on the possibility of having a stage with the plays and things down in the center of town. That would be something neat. But that whole area, I've been around the country to small areas where they've taken old towns and made them new old towns for the benefit of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of other kind of opportunities we could bring together. I noticed Downingtown area has musical things that are presented. Miller Park down in Exton does that kind of thing. We could create cultural things in our Coatesville area, because we have a lot of talented people. We have musicians that don't play any longer. We have actors and actresses who'd love to deal with that kind of thing, and we could deal with that. Our sports programs aren't nearly what they once were. Especially the adult programs. We need to deal with, our kids no longer have to stay at home. They can drive a car and go 100 miles in no time flat. We could create things for our youngsters. We need cooperation within the townships and within the school itself. We need to begin to recognize something that all teachers and probably all parents know, that if you really want to have a good education, you got to teach one youngster, not a classroom full of youngsters, and develop them through a continuum where, and not in just a program where you teach a subject called Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, but you teach a kid to think mathematically and get involved with the computer and go places where you would never go in a regular public school, because once the reading, writing, and arithmetic are taken care of, there's still an individual sitting there and saying, well, what about me?
Yeah.
What about what I really care about? When do I learn that kind of thing? And if we use that kind of spirit in our schools, this will transcend into our Coatesville area, and we'll be getting youngsters who are great painters, and we'll get people who are interested in all kinds of things, actually putting those into the adult world. And so we need to get a great deal more adult activity in our Coatesville area. And I think we've got to stop talking about Coatesville and now begin to recognize that Coatesville is a part of the Coatesville area, and not get real mad if it's called the Coatesville area and not just Coatesville. I'm proud that I lived in Coatesville, but I live in West Brandywine now. And I'm proud I live in West Brandywine, but I still am a Coatesvillian from the Coatesville area. And I would like to see this all come together in some kind of a unified, maybe we need to start with a planning kind of a study group that would say, all right, let's have people from every part of our townships come together, maybe 20 people, just to start, and say, what can we do well together? We need to get well by being together. And that might be the buzzword for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wellness
And togetherness.
Togetherness. And that's kind of like what people are now. They're not trying to be sick any longer. They're trying to be well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wellness program. Well, our county, our area, the Coatesville area, could have a wellness program. And with some real interested people and some people to dedicate some time, we could probably do some marvelous things. So I would be willing to serve on that wellness committee and get the ball rolling. We could create programs for every walk of life. We could make it an interesting place. Make Coatesville interesting. Make Coatesville people want to have great pride. Make Coatesville people want to stay here and do things, because we always want to look at the other side of the fence for the green grass. And we've got great grass.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to let everybody know that it's here. And if we'll just take time to share with each other. And maybe we need to remember what God said one time when he was trying to tell man what would be the best thing he could ever do for man. And he said, faith, hope, and love. If we could learn to love each other by recognizing that we can play together, be together, and be thankful together, this would be a great place to live. And it really is. We just need to work on it a little harder.
All very interesting insights, Bill, and very enthusiastic insights, and I thank you for sharing them with us, and I thank you for being a part of Coatesville's oral history.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my life, and I thank you very much, Kirk.